Hi, I'm Giri Prakash from the Federal. We are meeting here at a time when there is more than turbulence in the air for domestic airlines in the country. Go First has become the latest airline to file for bankruptcy with the National Company Law Tribunal. What has, however, upset the rest of the stakeholders by the ruling of NCLT is that because of the moratorium, lessors will not be able to take possession of the aircraft. Pilots with a 1-year waiting period as per the regulator DGCA's norms will not be able to join any other airline till the waiting period gets over, and the banks will find it hard to get their money back. Then there is a possibility of airport slots being given away to other airlines. And of course, all the problems started with Pratt & Whitney engines, the scourge of all airlines whose aircraft are fitted with these engines. But what is the elephant in the room, which nobody wants to discuss it now? It's about how airline after airlines in India have been folding up one after another, starting from East West Airlines to Go First, which is, of course, in the process of being rescued. There are at least a dozen of them since the government announced the open air policy in 1990 that no longer exists. So what is it that makes domestic airlines go down under? I have with me Captain A.K. Sachdev, who is the GoAir's first Chief Operating Officer, now called Go First, Captain Mohan Ranganathan, aviation analyst and aviation safety consultant, and the former instructor pilot of Boeing 737, Mr. Yashwant Shanoy, advocate and policy advisor and legal consultant to regulatory authorities of the government on aviation, and Captain Sam Thomas, who is the president of the Airline Pilots Association and has previously worked with Jet Airways. Thank you very much to each one of you for gracing this discussion. Let me start off with Mr. Ranganathan about if you could say another 5 minutes, sort of rerun the entire scenario, and then from there we could take the baton forward.
Yeah, like you mentioned, East West is the first airline. Actually, the first commercial airline that started and folded up was Airasiatic, which is started by the HIET college. So they used to fly Chennai, or rather Madras, to Bombay, Mangalore, and back. And towards the end, they reached a stage where the cash and carry was stretched to the limit. And they used to sell the tickets, and the commercial guy would come running and give the cash to the captain, and they would put so much fuel. So once they had enough fuel for the flight, they would go. And Sam Thomas knows both the pilots who were flying for them, Captain Shantaraman, Captain Balraman, who were with Jet Airways. Yeah. That was the first airline which folded up. Then it was East West. Then you have NEPC, Damania, Paramount, MDLR, you name it. Yeah. But, everything you will think is the failure of the airline. I call it the failure of the civil aviation policy. Because if you see in all the failures, none of the promoters have lost money. They've all made their money. See, civil aviation, in my opinion, is the most corrupt system in India. And that is why airlines are failing one after the other. And none of the promoters have been affected. They all live a luxurious life. The employees and the shareholders are the ones who are suffering. And nobody cares for them. And I can say it openly that the system is run by babus who are clueless. You have ministers who are clueless. They all want to take, when you start a route, every minister who comes, you will have flights from Delhi to wherever the minister is from. Starting with the Vayudut. We had one Marika from Pondicherry who was the Minister of State. Indian Airlines used to have, the minister would come to Chennai, and Vayudut used to fly Chennai-Pondicherry. And the chief pilot of Vayudut has told me that even if the flight was full, they can't break even. And then the whole slide started, I would blame that 1 rupee ticket that Air Deccan started selling. You see, that was the most foolish thing to kill aviation, because you have the minimum operating cost, and you cannot make, like, which is the most expensive part of airline operation, is fuel. And for every 10 passengers you carry, you're adding 1 ton to the aircraft weight. And for every 1 ton for jets like 737 or the 320s, you're burning up 300, 400 kilos of fuel extra. And your 1 rupee ticket is not going to make up that loss. And when you have a number of flights, and you see, all that the ministry or the DGCA is interested is numbers. If we are the fastest growing airline, we have so many, they know only one part of mathematics, that's multiplication. If 1 month they get 10,000 passengers, they'll just multiply it by 24 for the next 2 years projection. They are absolutely clueless. And one after the other, airlines have been dying. And whatever they call the financial audits, it's a joke. I have the financial audit report of Kingfisher with me. That airline should have been shut down the day the DGCA officials did that audit, but they didn't. And see, when an airline is losing money, where do they cut costs? It's in safety and training. All of them, whether it's GoAir or whether it's Indigo, everyone cut costs. And who are the persons who are going to suffer? You and I, when we travel, when there's a crash, Yashwant and I know we've been fighting the Mangalore crash for the last 13 years. That was the biggest fraud on aviation, where the court of inquiry covered up pure murder, covered up ministry, the DGCA, the airline, and everything. And they blamed only a pilot. In every fatal accident, you'll find the pilot error. And the same DGCA officials are getting richer. Nobody is accountable. There's no transparency. Now, when Kingfisher folded up and so many employees were left in the lurch, did the ministry wake up? No. All they want is, we are the fastest growing airline, and they start. Then when Air India, they were talking about taxpayers' money. Nobody talks about taxpayers' money being pumped into these Udan airline thing. They are falling like 9 pins. I know so many Jet Airways pilots who are 777 qualified, and they are flying 80 hours now. That's an insult. You take the air traffic controllers. We have a severe shortage of air traffic controllers. Yeah. But every year, the minister will announce 100 airports. Who's going to man the air traffic control? We just bluff with numbers. And if you think Go First, the funny thing was, yesterday I was going through my old photographs. I found Kingfisher, and I have a photograph, Kingfisher First. Looks like the day they changed that to Go First, they wrote their obituary.
Yeah.
So
true. Yeah.
Now we are going to be, the ministry is propping up SpiceJet. I'll say it openly. Now, they try every trick in the book to try and stay alive, but the day is not far off before they fold up. And if you talk of Air India and Indigo, they'll be the only ones left very shortly. And I don't know how far or how long the Akasa Air growth is going to be, because nobody knows where the funding is. As long as if you're selling tickets for load factor and not for yield, you're writing your obituary.
Which is true. Thanks, Captain Ranganathan. You raised some very key issues, and we're going to discuss this as we go forward. Captain Sachdev, you're the first CEO of GoAir and now Go First. And before we start discussing about the industry, I would like to know about your experience when you onboarded GoAir, and how was it at that time, and how is it that at this time it has come to such a pass?
Okay, so I joined GoAir before it started flying.
Okay.
It actually flew the first flight on the 4th of November, 2005. And we had the proving flight kind of a thing on, I think, if I remember rightly, it was the 30th of October, when we got a whole lot of people together, including DGCA. And I remember Nasli Wadia speaking about the airline, and his body language and his spoken language showed that he had no interest in the airline. He, in fact, said in as many words that Jay was very keen, that is his younger son, who was later the first MD. He said Jay was very keen to start the airline, but he never said that the Wadia group or I wanted to start the airline. Anyway, that is just an aside. When the airline started, we were very, very cautious. There was no great ambition about growing fast and things like that. In fact, I remember at that time there was a regulation saying that you had to have minimum 5 aircraft to keep your AOP alive.
Right, yeah.
And we realized after some time, I think it was into the 9th or 10th month of our operations, that the more aircraft you flew, the more were your losses. So we actually cut down from the 5 which we had reached to get the AOP. We actually gave away 2 back to the lessors and started flying only with 3. Until DGCA suddenly caught on, and one day they got us by the scruff and said, if you don't have 5 aircraft, your AOP will be taken away. And so we bought some time by telling them, okay, by the end of this financial year, we will again have 5, and that's what it did. So the point I was trying to make was that the airline was not ambitious. In fact, if you see the growth of aircraft, it was very, very slow, very, very gradual.
Yeah.
Because we realized that the way the airlines were operating, every flight you lost some money. Yeah. So if you just kept going slowly and reached, somewhere, then it was okay. Then, of course, there was a change, when the NCAP came in, they scrapped the 520 rule. 520 rule was the one which required you to have 5 aircraft and 20 aircraft and 5 years of experience to fly international. So the NCAP scrapped the 5 part of it and just kept the 20 part. So then GoAir, immediately sprinted up to 20 and started flying international in the hope that international will make some money. It didn't really make some money. And in fact, around that time, 2016 was the time, by the time I left in 2010. But in 2016, things started going bad because then we had an order of 72 Neos, and they were powered by the new GTF engine. That is PW1100GJM. So that is where all the problems started. Initially, everything was very fine. Everybody was happy because theoretically, although nobody could prove it on paper, we were saving 16% of the fuel. We were making less carbon, injection into the environment, and so on and so forth. So this number of seats was more, 6 extra seats. So everybody thought that we are doing very well. But the GTF engine, from what I read later, had not actually been tested in the field to the extent it ought to have been. And also it had been used for trials only in European American kind of environment, where it didn't show up the problems which started showing when we were flying in tropical climates. Essentially, we were flying in domestic and everywhere all over India with the same kind of climate accrued. That's where the problems started appearing. And when they started, talking about it, so initially it kept on till 2018. They were just still, saying, no, this problem, that. There were 3 or 4 major problems which needed to be sorted out, and which P&W did, Pratt & Whitney did sort out and started giving replacement aircraft which had been refurbished and engine which had been sent back. But from 2018 onwards, again, the problem started. 2020, it reached actually the climax where, things could not be managed anymore. And the daily losses because of the aircraft which are on the ground, as of today, as of just before insolvency, 28 aircraft were on the ground because of engines.
Yes.
Cannibalizing from this to that and making the rest out of the 54, the rest of them serviceable. yet 28 were on the ground. And so there was a lot of loss of revenue. As per GoAir's claim in the MLLP, they have said that they lost 10,000 crores because of this. It may not be true, but that's a moot point. So in now the situation in which GoAir was, they had learned their lesson from Jet, I think, because Jet to restructure the loan instead of going for insolvency. And as a result, what happened was that, 4 years, 5 years later, they are still trying to restructure. And now only, I think a couple of months back, another entity has been asked to take over the management. But they lost all that time, all that money. So GoAir, was proactive. It went for insolvency. And that's where this whole thing is started. So I hope that puts a little bit of background.
I mean, it also reaffirms Captain Ranganathan's statement about how the wishy-washy policy of the government has actually been the cause or the root cause for all the problems that the airlines are facing, right? I would like to go to Mr. Shenoy. Thank you very much for being part of this discussion. Mr. Shenoy, you're also the one who actually went to court and shut the booking portal of Go First. And very surprisingly, they were issuing tickets, even though they knew that they kept on, extending the dates when it came to resuming the operations, but they were at the same time going ahead with bookings. And I understand that even though the DGCA said that they should go ahead and reimburse the amount to the passengers, what they did was issue coupons. So given that kind of a situation, and you have been part of the regulatory authority and an activist as well. So how do you read this situation? What exactly do you concur with the rest of the two speakers, or how do you look at the entire scenario?
The first thing that struck me was this. I booked tickets for myself, my family, everybody on 2nd of May and spent about 70,000 rupees. And within an hour of me booking the tickets, I get to know that GoAir has filed for a voluntary insolvency. Now, as a lawyer, the first thought that came to my mind is that it is a clear act of fraud. It's a criminal offense that they have done. Because unlike any other kind of insolvency, when you are filing for voluntary insolvency, you need to have a board of director pass a resolution. You need a shareholders resolution passed. Now, according to the papers that they have filed in NCLT, it is clear that they have passed this on 28th of April and 30th of April. So technically, they had the knowledge. They should have stopped the booking portals. Now, the best part is this. Even after filing for insolvency, they continued booking. I wrote to the CEO of GoAir. I wrote to the DGCA. Both did not do anything. The booking was going on. I had to approach the court overnight, get an order, and then DGCA passes an order. Okay, now you shut down the portals. Now, the most important part of this is this. You need to understand. When Kingfisher went down, the total number of the amount of claim from ticket refunds was 3,000 crores, of which 2,008 crores was admitted, and 2,000 crores is as good as any banking financial creditors giving money. Now, look into this. There is nobody to represent people who have brought in 2,000 crores. Not one single person. Now tell me, which person is going to hire a lawyer and pay 50,000 to a lawyer to get a refund of 10,000 rupees? So this money, they know, is money that nobody is going to ask for, and they are not going to be liable to pay this. So this particular kind of fraud that is being played, and that being played with the regulator being awake, or at least maybe not awake, maybe feigning sleep. So that is something unacceptable, and for this, GoAir is going to pay. I'm not going to leave them, because it is not about 70,000. It is about Wadias, who are probably one of the richest corporate families in this country, snatching away people's small money. And if they think there's smart cookies there, trust me, I'm going to ensure that warriors are going to face criminal trial throughout this country in different places. Let them do. Let them spend money on lawyers, whatever they want, let them do. And the second important point is, as Captain Ranganathan said, is which is your biggest compromise that you do? Is the safety. Now let me point out.
Yeah.
Let me point out. Every permissions, every certifications given by the DGCA were given at a particular point in time when they had certain systems, certain number of personals and everything that were there. Now I am telling you, all these certifications, all these permissions granted by DGCA is null and void for the simple reason that you do not have the personnel that you were claiming to have. For example, I have myself drafted resignation letters for half a dozen pilots. Now, you tell me, how the hell are you going to keep these pilots run the aircraft? And another thing, pilots are afraid of their DGCA and the 6-month notice period rules and stuff. So they might come, but what about those other people who might not turn up? So now even look into this schedule. Now let us say, even if they are going to operate, technically let us say they are getting aircraft, they are going to operate. Please tell me which schedule they will follow. The schedule that is given by the DGCA, approved by DGCA? No, they cannot, because they do not have the personnel to do it. You need aircraft maintenance professionals, you need pilots, you need cabin crew. Some people might decide, I am not being paid salary, I am not coming for work. And the fraud is not just with the consumers. You see, all those people who left GoAir in the last 1 year period, they have not been paid their full and final settlement. And then between 24th May and 29th May, GoAir makes an advance payment of 3.5 crores in salaries to some people, selective people. Now that is fraud. The Wadias are going to answer for this fraud. Now let me point out, Kingfisher, Jet Airways, there were nobody who raised the issues of fraud. So those people are running scot-free. Nobody, no answers. But I'm not going to leave Wadias. This is the opportunity I've got. I will make them answer. And this country needs to know, or needs to see, that you can be as powerful as you claim to be. You can be as rich as you can be. But you will have to account for every penny paid by the citizens of this country. Now, there is a notice that I have sent to the DGCA and to the IRP. Now, the management of GoAir is not anymore in the picture. So, it is the IRP. Now, for all DGCA cars compliances, the airport, the air carrier, the operator, the accountable manager, everything is the IRP. Now, all those things is in his name. So, for the first time, probably in the aviation sector, you can zero in onto 2 people for safety. One is the IRP, Abhilash Lal, and 2 is Vikram Devdutt, the DGCA. I have sent notices to both of you. I am telling them, you cannot operate safely. I have written very clearly, you cannot operate safely. You take the chance. You are the 2 people I'm going to come after. One plane goes down, anything happens to GoAir, it causes loss of lives or loss of property, I will go after these 2 people, Vikram Devdutt and Abhilash Lal. I am telling you one thing. I do not see any realistic chance for GoAir to be in air even for one single time hereafter. It's simple as that.
Statement. Yeah.
Yes, and another aspect of it. Yes, the lessors cannot take possession of their aircraft, but at the same time, there is a very clear restriction on the IRP to take custody of the aircraft. Under Section 18, F, explanation A, he cannot take control of assets. And this means he cannot touch a single aircraft. So the IRP is in a problem. Now the second part, the moment the booking portal has been locked down, Where is the revenue? How are you going to run this as a going concern? Only people who can bring in revenue over money and investment is the Wadias. They could have done it without going to the NCLT. If they are going to be the investors, why did they go to the NCLT in the first place? If
that's quite a point.
I do not know. I am not a lawyer who boasts of having a big law firm or all those things, but I understand law, and I can tell you something. If somebody has said that going for a voluntary winding up is a smart move, trust me, it is the most foolish move I've ever seen a corporate like the Wadias. I would say Wadias because they are not just running GoAir. They are having some of the oldest companies in India. That experience. So with that experience, if they have done this, I'm telling you, the most foolish move. This has brought in cases of fraud. They are going to face criminal trial. They are never going to be in the skies anymore. And God alone help them. Simple as that.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Shenoy. Captain Thomas, the last time we met was on a Jet Airways flight. And since then, quite a few airlines have collapsed, including Jet Airways. Being the head of the Pilots Association, how do you read the scenario and what are your thoughts about it?
Firstly, that was a stupendous opening by Captain Ranganathan, ably supported by Group Captain Sachdeva, and the legal part was covered by Yashwant. He's an activist, and he will go when he says he's going after somebody, he is, believe me, going after somebody. That's great. Now, I'd like to put our perspective. That's the pilot's perspective. We firstly hear these fantastic words like NCLT, and we have first-hand experience of how this NCLT takes you for a ride. Firstly, you appoint an IRP or a resolution professional who can neither resolve a problem nor is a professional as far as aviation is concerned. You need some specialist. They come there and give grand statements. And what was carried out in Jet Airways was a far, far bigger fraud than what now GoAir is facing or what GoAir is going through right now. The second part is what Captain Ranganathan covered, what we call the ease of doing business. What we must be very mindful about is if you buy an aircraft in India, lots of people will come behind your life. The DGCA, the MOCA, every bureaucrat worth his salt will come after you with Indian Aircraft Act 1935 and the rules there in 1937. Now, as far as pilots are concerned, they enacted a very fraudulent civil aviation regulation requirement called the 1 year notice period. Now, the fun part is nobody knows whether it's a 1 year notice period or a 6 month notice period. Now, this has been challenged in courts many times by us, and nobody seems to understand, so much so that the previous DGCA, one ex-DGCA, did come to the court and say that the civil aviation requirement is advisory in nature. So what happens to pilots, which is a very falsely decorated claim, and what happens to pilots is the judicial process is taken as a punishment in India, and that is applicable to pilots more than anybody else because we have everything of ours expires in 6 months. You are only as good as the first date of the 6th month. So the moment the guy tells you that you can't leave, and no employer is going to wait for you for 6 months and 1 year holding on. Because when Jet Airways was closing down, I specifically remember we had offers from many international airlines. We were 777 trainers. We could get into any airline. However, there were two people who played mischief in that particular thing. One was the IRP, and the other was the then chairman of State Bank of India, who was on television stating that he would infuse 1,500 crores. Now, as pilots, we are not qualified to judge whether these statements are good, bad, ugly. We are only worried, can we save our job and can we save our license? Yashwant brought out that there are pilots who are flying even without seeing salary. Now, there's a reason for that. if I fly, there are very, very many pilots today in GoAir who would like to go and fly for free, because nothing is free. It's just that it keeps their license current. So this is one of the biggest reasons why it's not that pilots are not brave enough, or maybe not as brave as Advocate Shenoy, but some of them are quite brave, and I've dealt with them, I've led them. So I know what we can do. However, it's the cost-benefit analysis that we do with respect to our license and our survival that makes us look like, that we are not really intending to fight. And also, here, the DGCA is used as a weapon against us. If I come onto a television channel, the first thing I get a show cause notice supported by DGCA saying, we will remove your license. Who are you to tell me that? I mean, I am doing this from 2009. Somehow they have not touched me so far. I don't know when they're going to do it, but I'm okay. I'm like, but I wouldn't advise this to other pilots. And it can be quite unnerving when your career is on the line and you get threats. So but I believe that the gentlemen before me have covered this topic in its entirety, and the most that most truthful way that I have ever seen on a show like this.
Thank you, Captain Thomas. What you have sort of underlined is that most of the policies made by the government are made in isolation. They do not take the views of the stakeholders, and perhaps that's the reason why it keeps collapsing all the time when there is a crisis. Captain Ranganathan, you actually made a very valid point about the Rupee-1 ticket by Air Deccan, and you said that actually led to the crisis that we all see right now. I remember Mr. Malia talking to us at a press conference saying that he felt that the Rupee-1 air ticket actually, and whatever that you said, he said that this is something that we need to tackle, and it's going to lead to a lot of crisis. Eventually, a whole lot of airlines had to collapse because of that. But going beyond that, I would like to know when it comes to making these kind of policies, what are the considerations that the government takes while formulating these policies, and why is it that they are not tweaked along the way, looking at the new possibilities that happen in this new situation that emerges? For example, Captain Thomas talked about how GoAir has collapsed, Go First has collapsed, and these pilots have nowhere to go. Don't you think that the DGCA could have actually come out with an order saying that, yes, you're in a crisis, you need to run your families, you need to keep your licenses alive, so we'll relax that rule? How do you look at it?
See, to start with, Sam, I want to compliment you for mentioning about why pilots are flying. But at the same time, I've seen a number of pilots during my time where for every pilot who stands down and stands his ground, there are a dozen pilots with their bags packed to take a flight. And you will find they will all be substandard pilots. The really good professionals will never. I've offloaded the civil aviation minister on my flight because he came without security. And those days, only 5 were exempt from security. And civil aviation minister, and because that statement was signed by Mr. Chidambaram, who was Minister of Home in Rajiv Gandhi cabinet, which said that only these 5, all others, including union ministers, have to go through security. And Shivraj Patil and Rajesh Pilot came without security in Port Blair. I offloaded them. The Inspector General came and said, I will certify. I said, sorry, unless I see them walking through that X-ray gate, because I have to come through that X-ray gate, unless I see them coming through that, I will not take them. And I made an announcement to the passengers. I said, my duty time runs out at such a time. If I don't take off in the next 1 hour, 20 minutes, I'll be getting off. If you're stuck here, don't blame me, blame those 2 gentlemen who are sitting there. Absolutely. When I had about 20 minutes, they went and came. He landed in Chennai. called up Rajiv Gandhi and said he should be sacked. And it seemed he asked who was the captain, and he mentioned my name. He said, no, he's a stickler for rules, and he dropped the whole thing. Now, what I'm trying to say is, I'm not saying that every pilot, when I started flying, I flew for the Hindu. And there was one man I called my first guru. He taught me one thing. He said, be professionally very good so that nobody can touch you. The day you give in, that is the day they will ride you. And I followed that all through my career. The other thing, the DGCA, when they became zeros, was in 2007. You know, there was a beautiful FTTL car which came out, which Chopra brought out. And the airlines, Naresh Goel and all the airline owners went to Praful Patel, and GoAir was called and said, cancel that. I still have the copy of that letter, which says the competent authority in the Ministry of Civil Aviation have. So he handed over his regulatory authority to the Babus, who are zero as far as aviation is concerned. And from that time, I can say the slide of Indian aviation started the day GoAir signed off the regulator's authority to the Ministry of Civil Aviation. And after that, this has been like this. Yeah.
Okay, this is quite interesting background to the whole thing. But why is it that the DGCA or the Ministry of Civil Aviation is not flexible when it comes to
I have an
new
answer.
situation?
I have an
Okay, sure. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
See, the thing is this. The thing is, you know, how many passengers whose lives are at stake know anything about safety? They feel that the air hostess who brings them coffee and tea are there to serve them tea and coffee, but they are there to open the emergency door in case of emergency.
Tejashri Surya is there for that.
The moment the general public is not aware of certain things, what happens is the regulator is having a freedom to do anything and everything that they want to do, because nobody questions them. Please tell me, you know, the pilots, you know, the justification is that they want to keep their licenses current. I have heard justification that they have EMIs to pay, as if all the other people in this world do not have EMIs to pay. I have 100 of the pools. You know, I can go to any airline operator today and sell myself. But that is not integrity. You need to have certain values. You cannot say, no, pilots have so this thing, you know, I'm telling you, these pilots need to only understand one thing. If they all decide they will not fly, they will not fly. There will not be one single airline operator who can take off to skies. Can you come in together? You will not come in. You will not come in because you have, the pilots are having this crab mentality. Let us make it very clear. The pilots, you need to understand another thing. Look at who our pilots are. They are the youngsters who probably have not even had graduation. They spend a crore or more than that to become pilots. And today, let me tell you, everybody are clocking their FDTL to the brim. 1,000 hours. 5 years, first officer is having, you know, 5,000 hours under his belt. Captain Ranganathan flew for 35 years to probably have about 15,000 or 20,000 hours.
20,000.
Yeah. So now look into this. Today, the youngster at 28, he is having 10,000 hours of flying. What is he doing? He's not even aware. You know, at the age of 35 or 40, he has to hang his backbone. Anyway, backbone is not there. But I'm telling you, he will be nothing but a piece of flesh. They do not understand. Now I will tell you, they want to keep their licenses current. I will tell you, 75% of pilots are having family problems. If I was in their position, to hell with, anyway you are not getting paid. At least spend time with your children. Spend time with your wife. Enjoy that time. Because see, the thing is, the need for pilots is so much. Any company who are having a need will get their licenses current. They will keep you going. But the mentality is this, the crab mentality. Okay, there is somebody to replace me and that fellow is standing next to me, and therefore I have a reason that I have to pay keep my licenses correct. The moment, see, this is where, don't blame DGCA. I am telling you, in this whole of this thing, I will, if I have to set apart one gang of people, it's pilots. They need to understand their role. They need to understand. If pilots had pulled the plug, Jet Airways would have gone into bankruptcy 4 months back or 6 months back. Now GoAir, look into this. But there is a difference. This is another point I need to tell now. Because as a lawyer, and most of the pilots come to me, and the one thing that I'm thinking is, don't think that pilots are only moving from GoAir. I am seeing a new trend. Pilots are leaving Vistara, pilots are leaving Air India, pilots are leaving Indigo. The ones which are very stable financially, they're leaving that. They're saying, to hell with you guys, I do not want it. They're moving, they're asking me what to do with the 6-month period. I say, you pay me my fees, I will take care of your 6-month period. I'll take care of your bonds, you run. They pay me, they're off. Now, this kind of revolt has started. And who is doing this revolt? Individual pilots in their individual capacity. Nobody is looking at unions. Nobody is looking at associations. And let me tell you, this is going to be extremely, extremely dangerous for the Indian aviation sector. Because again, you ask me, why is it that the policies, see, I have worked for many regulatory authorities in India. See, when you make rules, regulations, you have a particular aim to achieve. In India, unfortunately, it is not so. Let me point out, we had to negotiate a particular clause for an international convention. And I was given a call, since you are an expert in so and so field, can you just help us negotiate, where do we stand? How do we go about it? So in contract negotiation, in negotiation of any treaties, we need to know what is our strength, what is our weaknesses, where do we need to do, and what is it that we need to achieve. Here it is nothing. Here, kaun jayega Tokyo? Who will go to Tokyo? That is the question that ministries are fighting. And then they catch hold of some lawyers there thinking they will advise you. But when I ask for data to understand what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, there is nothing. Now look into this DGCA rule of 6 months. Whoever is the boss there, at that time, Naresh Goyal, he said, okay, my pilots are moving here and there. I want to stop them. Okay, DGCA comes up with a notice period rule. Now look into this. Please tell me, GoAir pilots are leaving without notice. Forget about GoAir. I am telling you, all other airlines also, Vistara, everywhere.
Yeah.
Notice period.
So I agree with you. Yeah.
Does any company ask for a NOC? No. Even Indian, they only to show off other people, they take an indemnity bond. Nothing. It's only to show. Now this NOC thing is a problem for the airline companies in India itself. Pilots will not understand because they have no depth to understand these things. They live hand to mouth. They live hand to mouth. Today they want. They are not bothered what happens tomorrow. They want today. They live in a very different world. They need to understand this thing. They need to understand their worth. The day they understand their worth, everything will fall in place in Indian aviation. And again, in our country, let me tell you, in our country, nothing has been set up by policy or anything. Whatever has happened is people's innovation. We always credit Manmohan Singh for globalizing. No, that was a year when India had to sign that treaty. India could not have afforded not to sign it. So it was signed. Who took advantage? Youngsters took advantage, who saw the world. And therefore, we grew as a country. But today also, you look at any policies. Are there policies which help India go into a global stage? Answer is no. We have a demographic dividend on papers, on statistics. But do our youngsters have skills? Zero. Not happening.
Yeah.
You are paying 8,000 rupees to a loader. He drinks.
Mr. Shinoy, we are slightly running out of time. I'd like to move to the others, if you don't mind.
Our problem
yeah.
is very different. We don't
Yeah.
have policies. We don't have
Yeah.
vision. Simple as that. That is where it is coming down. And since nobody is bothered about what aviation safety is or what aviation is, there is no check on DGCA. Therefore, DGCA does what they want. And therefore, there is no way anybody can do anything. And that is where I have caught hold of DGCA where it hurts them. I have to always go to the court to get an order. I always go to the court, get an order, put it on DGCA and tell, come on, now do this. This is where it is. If you need, dunya jukti hai, jukane wala chahiye. Simple as that.
Captain Thomas, I know you're a bit agitated, and before I come back to you, let me get back on the tracks. And Captain Ranganathan, let's look at the larger issue, and I refer to that about why is it that the DGCA is not flexible? Why is it that it it is not able to go with the times? Why is it still stuck to those very old rules, which are 5-6 decades old? What
not
needs to be
5-6
done?
decades. You heard what Captain Thomas referred.
Yeah, he talked about 1936.
1934 and 1937. And if you open your Indian aircraft manual, it still gives credit to the Governor General. We got our independence in 1947, and they have not bothered to change it. Actually, if India wants to improve and do away with all the nonsense and regulations, they just have to take the EASA rules, implement them here, just like what the Middle Eastern countries have done, what the Southeast Asian countries have done. You will find that 90% of our regulatory problems will be solved and your safety will improve. Here, they don't want to do it because, see, when they have incompetent people heading the ministry and the DGCA, that's where the money is. And if you take any rule, any CAR, you will find, see, ICAO says that anything which is mandatory, you have to use the word shall. But if you see any of the DGCA cars, you will find will, which means you can do it, you don't have to do it, nobody can question. And every car, the last line will be at the discretion of the Director General of Civil Aviation.
Correct.
He can give way. The waivers and dispensation is what is killing aviation. And the incompetence, you see, they all want to please the minister. Every one of them, I've seen for years. They only want to please the minister. Let me give you one thing which is off track now. I wonder if any of you have seen the latest Singapore Airlines. In 1 year, they've got the highest profits in 76 years. And you know how many months bonus the workers, including pilots, are getting? 22 months salary. Now, that is the kind of growth. Now, I hear people saying how SIA is mismanaging Air India. Here, the DGCA and the ministry will not let a professional function because they don't have control. As long as they can't control something, they will try to kill it with all kinds of regulations. So the day civil aviation, we have an independent civil authority, which is what ICAO has been asking from 2006. The day we deregulate the control of the ministry, we can improve. Till then, forget about it. Whether it is the Tatas or Indigo, it is all number game, nothing else.
Can I just add to that?
Captain, please go ahead. Please go ahead. I was
a small point. Firstly, I feel that all the problems related to DGCA have a single major factor is that there are no aviation professionals in DGCA.
Absolutely.
Walk through the corridors and see 1 or 2 boards saying that this guy is either a captain or a group captain or a wing commander. The rest of them are all, and the head, he himself is a generalist. He doesn't understand. When the people are asked, if you will all remember that case of Indigo, where a pilot used to touch the nose wheel every time. They took action against that pilot and against the airline. But when media asked the DG, can you please answer this question, why this, why that, about our training and all? He said, this is a technical question, I cannot answer it. I mean, that is the crux of the problem. And same is the case with the Civil Aviation Ministry. There is no professional from civil aviation, although it is the Ministry of Civil Aviation. And the Civil Aviation Authority Act, which Captain Ranganathan just mentioned, in 2013, it was mooted, I think in August or September or something. And by the time it was alive for 2 parliament sessions, and after that, it just died a natural death. There is nothing to, even that was a half-hearted kind of effort, but at least it would have been a beginning, but it hasn't happened. And the upshot of all this is that the biggest failure of our DGCA and the ministry is that we have not been able to inculcate amongst the aviation professionals any kind of self-discipline. The only thing which gets done is what is DGCA is sitting on over your shoulder and watching and making sure that it happens. But nobody does anything of his own volition. All the things which are being followed by the airlines, by the business aviation, which are given in the rules and the cars and the circulars, are the ones which are being monitored by somebody. Nobody goes one step beyond what is being monitored. That is the biggest failure of DGCA.
Captain Sachdev, I would want you to give me 3 things that the ministry should do to set right this entire situation so that airlines don't start collapsing one after another. I mean, this seriously affects a whole lot of stakeholders, passengers, as Mr. Shenoy has been saying. How do you look at this scenario? And there are 3 things that I would want you to tell me.
Is that for me?
Yeah, Captain Sachdev.
Okay,
yeah.
so the first one is what we are discussing, the DGCA. It ought to be in a body which is financially independent so that it has total autonomy and is not dependent on anybody, or he wants to take a decision, but he gets one call from the ministry and he can't take it. So that is the first thing. CAA would have been a step towards that. I don't know what would have been the final shape of the act, but it was at least a conscious and deliberate effort to move towards that direction. The other thing which can stop all this is to look after the aviation fuel costs, because that is the one which is bugging the airlines and business aviation the most. And we keep hearing all these articles, all these people, all these wise men saying that the states are not cooperating. I have sat through meetings where the state people refused. They said, we will not agree. But the point is that we don't have to beg the state finance secretaries to do it. The Constitution, Article 263 or 283, I think, if I remember rightly, it authorizes, and empowers the government to take a decision and just say it is a declared good and give a justification why it is a declared good. After that, the states have got no say. We have been, talking about it for since this new wave of liberalization started in 2003. We have been talking about bringing ATF under declared goods, but no government has had the guts to do it. It is under the Constitution that the government can declare it. Then the third thing which can be done is, we've been talking about, surveillance, this thing, and I mentioned earlier that the surveillance and, things, surprise visits, etc., is what is keeping a minimum kind of discipline going. What is really needed is a financial audit of airlines. Theoretically, there is a financial audit of airlines. One of the members of the team which come for surveillance, they give a printed format to the accountable manager to fill up. Nobody checks what details you have filled up there, the veracity of that. You can fill up anything you like, and it is taken as the final word, and nobody checks on that. But you see what has been happening. I mean, GoAir's situation, how much it owed to, and before that Kingfisher, how much they owed to banks, how much they owed to fuel companies, how much they owed to other vendors and debtors. I mean, nobody really comes and looks at that. And then the macro picture, like the Deutsche Bank, for example, gave a 300 million loan to an entity called Lila Lands, which is based in Mauritius. That company now invested 191 million out of that US dollars into fixed deposits with some other people. Based on that, GoAir, which is another Vadia company, took a loan based on that as the collateral. So you see what is happening there. But if somebody had just taken a look at the macro picture, he would realize that this is, again, like Yashwant would say, it's a total fraud. You're just rotating the same money and you don't really have money to pay back. So, I mean, I'll stop there because Captain...
Sure. Captain Thomas, now you have an opportunity to reply to Mr. Shanai's questions. Apart from that, 3 things that you would like to see that the aviation industry improves in India.
Yeah, firstly, just by the...
and also we are slightly running out of time.
So I'll make it as brief as I can. The rhetoric that all pilots are fools, all land up here. Firstly, let me inform you that piloting an airplane is a mechanical skill. You don't really need to be a scientist to start flying. The more you are a scientist, the lesser you can fly a plane. Now, second part of, agitating for everything. In India, we are not taught from home to, stand up for our rights or anything like that. As far as 2009 is concerned, I did the same thing. As I asked the pilots not to come for duty, or rather not to fly. Everybody agreed. However, what happened thereafter is what people don't know. We got a notice from the court saying that this particular act of yours is considered as deemed to be acting in concert, therefore an illegal strike, and we can imprison you. And if you do not come back to duty in the next 24 hours, you will be held in contempt of court. Now, these are things that can actually happen. Actually, you can go to jail for contempt of court. Ask Mr. Sahara Shri, who was inside for quite some time. Anyway, as far as your question regarding these 3 things, firstly, like both the gentlemen ahead of me said, super specialization in aviation is required before you end up in a place like Ministry of Civil Aviation or DGCA. CAA is what we would hope for, an autonomous body. And most importantly, whenever you take decisions, please involve all stakeholders, irrespective of whether you like their face or not. Just because it is being headed by... Now what happens is you take representation of pilots, which is a very key factor, but you take Air India's 2-3 chosen people whom you like, who live in Delhi next to DGCA, and then show. That is something that we are looking forward to. Please involve the stakeholders. All developing countries do that. And that would be at least one step forward. And if you can get rid of all the bureaucrats,
Captain Ranganathan, 3 things that you would like to see happening in India in the civil aviation sector.
The first thing I like to see happening in India is that we have judges who understand aviation safety. Mangalore is the best example for that. Ashwant will know when that the case came up, which was filed by an activist. Exactly what he said happened. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court gave dismissed the PIL with a statement: the government and the regulator shall follow all rules and regulations. In the Mangalore crash, there were blatant violations. No rules were followed. The court of inquiry headed by an air marshal just covered up all that, and they blamed only the pilot. A PIL was filed with proof of all the violations of rules. And what did the Supreme Court bench do? They gave the entire case file to the Ministry of Civil Aviation to assess if it's a worthwhile case. It's like asking a murderer, you decide whether you murdered someone. So what we need is a judiciary which will hold accountable people, hold them accountable. Like what happens if the same thing had happened in US, the minister and the DGCA would have been taken to the cleaners. So we need a judiciary who understand aviation safety. And I'm saying this bluntly because there's another case where 3 judges were on board SpiceJet flight in Hubli, which went off the runway. My letter from Kesak is there that you cannot operate at night to Hubli because it didn't have the facilities. 3 judges were on board and they didn't even act. So we have judges who are clueless as far as aviation safety. As long as they can fly business class from A to B, they are happy. That is one. Second, we need accountability, not just with, see what happens is when you order a large number of aircrafts, you get discounted rates. The promoter makes the money by selling it back to a leasing company. So he's made his company. But what people don't seem to understand that all your lease charges are in US dollars. You are selling your tickets in rupees. How are you going to service them? You're getting crony capitalists, the bankers who get their positions taken care of. They give them dollar loans. The ministry gets everything pushed. So it is a taxpayer and you and I who suffer. So we need accountability and transparency. We need a good judicial system, and we need a professionally qualified and knowledgeable minister and DGCA. Until they do that, you can forget about safety or any improvement in aviation.
Thank you, Captain Ranganathan. I will have you have the last word, Mr. Shenoy. You actually represent the passengers as well. So how do you look at this scenario? The 3 things that you'd like to see which would change the Indian aviation scenario returning to health?
I would put it in one sentence. Until and unless the stakeholders stand up for themselves, there is no other way in which you can do it. For example, many of the panelists said you have to have a CAA and therefore we will become professional. I'll give you an example. Election Commission of India. Election Commission of India is an autonomous body and we know what's happening with that. So it is not the idea of making a regulator independent and impartial on papers. The idea is to have people with integrity, people with courage, people to stand up saying that this is what the law says and this is what I will follow. And the thing is, when stakeholders are there to stand up saying that, okay, this is the law, you don't follow, and I'll stand up to it. That is where, a contempt notice coming from the court, the pilots get back to work the very next day. I went to the Delhi High Court on Pratt & Whitney engines. I went to Delhi High Court and the judges were open to me. It is how you present your case, how you tell them what is wrong with it. So, and again, as Captain Ranganathan said, I am the same person who went to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court handed over the entire fight to the Ministry of Civil Aviation. So we get all kinds of judges and everybody. But today, let me tell you, if every pilot in this country says, we will not fly, there will be a no-fly day. And what would be the grounds? The grounds will be safety violations. And let me tell you, let me assure you, there will be not one single court in this country which can pass an order saying that do not do this. Because the thing is, all your parameters on aviation safety is in red. And therefore, the one and only one point that I'm saying, I'm not even asking for 3 points. I'm saying the stakeholders have to be eternally vigilant and stand up for any minor breaches. Stand up, point it out, call it out. And until and unless you do this, there is no way Indian aviation is going to survive.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We now know where the problem lies, and it's just that it's not being addressed in a very proper manner, in a focused manner. Thank you, Captain Ranganathan. Thank you, Captain Sachdev. Thank you, Captain Thomas. And thank you, Mr. Shenoy, being part of this discussion, which I believe has turned out to be very interesting. Thank you very much to all of you.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more news and updates.